What do you know about...
Spider-Man 2.
I have a grasp on the basics.
And you're doing it wrong.
Is Spider-Man 2 the most disappointing game ever or the second greatest superhero game of our generation?
Quantum mechanics says it's both. How can it be both?
It can't.
It can't. But it is. It's paradoxical, and yet it works.
Well, I bit the bullet. After being a devout Xbox user since day one, I just couldn't resist the temptation anymore, and I bought a PlayStation 5. I'd been wanting to finally get my hands on the Insomniac Spider-Man games for years, and after borrowing a friend's console to play the 2018 Masterpiece and Miles Morales both in the span of a week, I figured it was probably time to just do it and go buy my own console, and finally get my hands on the newest installment in the Insomniac Spider-Man gaming universe. So, having done a playthrough of Marvel's Spider-Man 2018, this time in the remastered PS5 version, and ignoring Miles Morales because I couldn't wait any longer to meet its threequel, I finally loaded it up. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I was about excited as I was for the first 6 seconds of the Batman Arkham Shadow trailer.
This right here is bullshit!
I'm never quite going to forgive Rocksteady for that one. And my god, this game delivered. I've never in my life been as invested in a Spider-Man story and world as much as I was in this one. The story of the Venom symbiote slowly destroying Peter Parker's life as he tangles with his own struggles in the wake of losing his Aunt May, while his already strenuous relationship with MJ and his newly rekindled friendship with Harry Osborn blossoms, all while his protege Miles deals with the loss of his dad at the hands of Martin Lee and his own future, had me hooked from the beginning. Every twist and turn had me reacting like I actually knew these people personally, while the gameplay and its changes kept things interesting and engaging outside of the cutscenes and set pieces. This game was the next logical step in the evolutionary chain of Spider-Man masterclass from Insomniac, a perfect storm. Well, almost. In this retrospective, we'll take a look at the ups and downs of, as of now, my second favourite superhero game of all time. Don't worry, Pookie, they can't hurt you, it's okay, they're not going to get you, just stay calm. Spider-Man 2 is a perfect step in the right direction, but also left so much to be desired, from the spectacular but unfulfilling story to the amazing and yet far from complete traversal system. So come with me and my grizzled veteran of the Force partner who's retiring next week as we tackle the biggest mystery of the last year, the Spider-Man 2 conundrum. To better understand this impossible brain teaser, we first need to get a clearer idea of the potential masterminds behind this puzzling mystery. So here's the lineup of suspects me and my grizzled veteran partner have concocted.
What a bunch of a-holes.
And after we've seen the evidence, we can make a clear and totally unbiased opinion on which of these filthy animals tainted the legacy of a generation-defining piece of media for such a beloved character. First in our lineup is the story. Spider-Man 2's story is a story all about balance and second chances, and that's something made abundantly clear several times throughout the runtime. And considering this is a 15 to 20 hour story, depending how good you are at parrying, that's a lot of times it's made clear. Now, I'm not going to go through the story act by act, scene by scene to break this down, and see if it's the reason this game missed the lofty heights it was aiming for. Instead, I'll point out a few reasons why I think the story missed the mark, and we can see what went wrong from there. Just a disclaimer, but by no means do I think the story of this game is bad. Like I said in the intro, I was hooked on it for the entire time I was playing through it, and it's a story that brought out a lot of emotional response in me, and at the end of the day, I think it served more than its purpose, and in my opinion, it built off the story and endings of its predecessors really well. But alas, this seemingly innocent culprit brought in to fill the lineup has plenty of skeletons in its closet. Let's start off with the main reason I think the story missed the mark. The entire third act. After the brilliant Peter versus Miles boss fight, which we'll get into later, Peter manages to get the symbiote off him that's been running the spider show since it latched onto him while fighting Kraven, and from this point forward the story seems very, very rushed. Peter has the symbiote on him, and it leaves Harry Osborn, who actually needs it, or he'll, die of a debilitating disease. But the symbiote latches onto Peter, and we get a pretty lengthy look at a symbiote-enhanced Spider-Man, and it's really cool. I'll probably never forget playing as Peter the first time you get the new suit. It was one of those moments playing it where I started grinning like some sort of chimp. The game makes you feel like you've got more power than before, and it does a really good job at this.
MJ, get him out of here.
But when he loses it, it kind of feels like the game should have built on the already waning relationship between Harry and Peter. Because technically Peter is the reason Harry is dying at this point. As yes, he did take the suit that was keeping Harry alive, but Harry seems pretty chill about all of this. And instead of building up reasons for Harry to genuinely hate Peter by making Peter outwardly snap at Harry morons,
Why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel?
Hey,
Oh god, okay, never mind, yeah. Anyway, we get a really shoehorned in scene of Norman Osborn praising Peter, and in typical we need this character to be jealous of this character fashion, Harry overhears this out of context. But forgive me if I'm wrong, and I very well could be, but I don't remember this coming up in the story ever again. It's a really weird scene that doesn't serve anything apart from giving Harry a reason to be even more resentful of Peter, despite the fact he never brings this up, which renders the whole thing pointless. But back to my point. From losing the symbiote to the final mission, we get 7 main story missions. 7 missions to build up a fight between a fallen hero and his best friend. We get to see so much of how Peter and Harry genuinely love each other, and how they clearly missed one another while Harry was undergoing his treatment. And this would have been the perfect time to add a few missions where we get to see just how far Harry has actually been taken by the symbiote. Have him jump Spider-Man in the open world while the player traverses, akin to the Taskmaster missions in the first game. Have him make an effort to go after the ones Peter loves outside of the MJ fight. Make the city fall into disarray more gradually. Have him attack Feast, or something along those lines. There's so much they could have done here to really make the player understand, and see that the thing we're up against now isn't the Harry we cycled to Midtown with or went to Coney Island with. This is Venom. And actually, while we're on the topic of Venom, where did he get that name? I know the name given to the symbiote by Oscorp was VNM257, but there's 2 reasons why this is just a bit silly. And don't get me wrong, I love silliness in comics. I'm looking at you, Detective Comics 122 Catmobile. The first one being, why would you name a life-saving treatment for your son Venom? Just think about Venom. Venom. And the second's actually a wider point about comic book games and films, but why does everything need an in-universe explanation? Unless someone outwardly names the suit Venom or something like that, just do what literally everyone else in the game did and call it either the suit or the symbiote. We know who Venom is, and we don't need him to say we are Venom to know that. I understand it's not that simple, and by that logic Spider-Man shouldn't need to be called Spider-Man because we know who he is, but I hope that makes some sort of sense. If this is truly a different take on Venom like Insomniac said it would be, treat him like one. And maybe in his apparent upcoming spin-off game, then we can get the name Venom from somewhere. Next I wanted to talk about the MJ missions. Yeah, we're talking about the MJ missions. In the first game, the MJ missions were as on rails as they were dull, and quite frankly they were a massive low point in the game in my opinion. And probably should have been skippable like the puzzle sections, although if you skip the puzzles you are just mentally inferior to the average baboon. What do they even mean? No, I'm kidding, but they were poor, but in this game, to Insomniac's credit, they smashed it with these missions. It's told to us through lines of dialogue in the missions that MJ went through Sable training.
training with Sable paid off sooner than I'd hoped.
which is why she's morphed into Mary John Wixon since the last game. Because oh my god, her unquenched thirst for blood went nowhere. She craves the flesh of man and she will not stop until she's killed everything and everyone. Honestly, I don't know why Peter doesn't just hang up the web shooters and let Daywalker Watson over here take over.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
She's one-tapping symbiotes Peter had issue fighting, people trained from birth to be hunters who say things like, live to hunt, all while Peter and Miles get captured by them, beaten down, worn out, and find them a challenge. This speaks to a wider balancing issue with Mary Wayne Gacy over here, because her kill count is off the charts, and they definitely could have balanced her better. But hey, my hat's off to you, Insomniac, because these missions are actually really fun and not on the rails, so you get points that this time around. I also can't mention the story without mentioning Miles Morales, the best Spider-Man in this game. Fight me about that. I will defend this take until the end.
Surprise chest bump?
Miles carries the Spider-Man in this game like his life depends on it, and despite his quarterback shift in this game, he feels like a B+ player, whereas Peter has well and truly left the whole friendly neighbourhood part of his title for a good 2/3 of this game. Miles inherits that and truly cares for the little guy, helping around his school, although surely someone would figure out that this Spider-Man who has the exact same haircut as Miles Morales, and every time Miles disappears, Spider-Man... Anyway, that doesn't matter. Not only does he keep himself grounded, but he gets abused by Daddy Longlegs over here and all but abandoned by Peter as soon as Agent Venom shows up. Oh yeah, Agent Venom's here. So, I was born in the year of our Lord 2005, and my Spider-Man knowledge as a child came from obviously the Sam Raimi films, the Amazing Spider-Man films, and the various 4-minute snippets of Spider-Man cartoons, I'd say, because I was probably too busy playing Lego Batman or something, and that was a bit strange. But I did learn of Agent Venom as a child, and he became a character I knew next to nothing about, but I had this like weird soft spot for. And that was definitely down to his like tactical armor and design, but nonetheless, I do quite like Agent Venom, and it was nice to see him show up here for a while. And it was even cooler to actually fight alongside him. Anyway, yeah, Miles essentially plays the role of Sergio Gomez on the Manchester City bench for the last 2 seasons and just holds it down, while Harry and Peter go off to rescue Tombstone. And this is the first time we see Peter and the symbiote close together, and the symbiote tries to bond with Peter. Miles' story in this game really starts when Martin Lee, the man who killed his dad, gets broken out of prison by the Hunters fairly early on in the story, and this sends Miles into a revenge-driven subplot, which really deserved more time because it's at points infinitely more interesting than whatever Peter is doing. But Miles goes through a few changes in the game. He fights Lee, but then realises that he can't spend his whole life hating this man, so he doesn't quite forgive him for killing his dad, as he shouldn't, but he gains a level of respect for the former Mr. Negative after he helps save Peter, and this further leans into the themes of the game, balance and second chances. Miles gets anointed at the end of the game by Peter as Peter steps back from the Spider Ring. In what capacity? Well, it looks like Peter's going to be part-time Peter from now on, as Miles grabs the brass ring and becomes New York's main hero, which is really nice to see, but doesn't make up for the fact Miles had the best character moments in this game, but really did feel like a bench player for most of the runtime. They also don't give Miles enough of his own fights to fight, I feel. I don't know if that's a weird take, but he feels tacked on to a lot of what Peter's doing, which doesn't feel fair considering he saves Peter more times than he should have to in this story, and literally in the first mission Peter would have died if it wasn't for him. But Miles definitely deserves more of a starring role in the next game, and I think this is what Insomniac were hinting at by having a really old, decrepit, useless and, at this point, worn down Peter Parker hand the reins to the young, up-and-coming starlet in Miles. Overall, Spider-Man 2's story has a lot of flaws, void of character development for certain characters, but it's fun, and I feel like that's what it needs to be. This was really obviously, as soon as you see the post-credit scene, it was really obviously a bridge between the first game and the third game coming out. But, like I said, it's fun, and that's what a Spider-Man story needs to be. It is a quintessential Spider-Man story, and despite its flaws, it hits all the beats a Spider-Man story should. The energetic highs, the emotional lows, the happy ending, and above all, cool action. And this game has that in abundance. Anyway, the city never sleeps, and neither does crime. Our next culprit is one that takes a lot of breaking down. A criminal of many faces. And no, I'm not talking about Clayface or the Chameleon. Our next culprit is the gameplay. The gameplay of Spider-Man 2 is as two-faced as even the most trusted DA. Consistent, but also in the end, disappointing. Spider-Man's 2 gameplay is as fluid as it is fun. Swinging and gliding from building to building feels as good as ever, and the feeling of being Spider-Man is as strong as we've ever felt it. But it could have been so much more. Let's start where every good Spider-Man game should start, the swinging. Swinging is as good as it was in both Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales, but that's it. It's as good as, but to say it's any better would be a stretch. Features like an updated amount of swagger from Peter and Miles while swinging are nice visually, but ultimately they don't serve a more expressive swinging experience any more than a fancy cutscene. But by God is it still fun. Gaining momentum and making New York your playground is still breathtaking, and doesn't feel any worse than it does during the first swing back in 2018. Frankly, it's hard to improve on this system without making fundamental changes to the game, and its loop itself. Finally though, we can loop-de-loop from buildings, but only when diving. A weird way to hinder the fluidity of fun, but add on to the fact we can't do multiple loops in one swing, and this new feature is as restricted as it is limitlessly fun. And this is the main issue with the traversal, its oxymoronic existence. Give Insomniac enough time to cook up a new engine or something, I don't know, I'm not a game developer, and this system could be perfected, even more so than I think it already is. I truly feel Spider-Man 2 stands alone atop the mountain of video game traversal. Its unrivaled sense of speed and momentum, combined with the easy to learn and hard to master skill gap, allows for it to thrive even 6 years after its first outing. But Insomniac knew this wasn't enough and finally allowed for players to take their own skill ceiling to the very top by adding the Swing Assistance setting. Setting 10 nearly plays the game for you and is for the newest of web slingers, but crank this baby down to 0 and web slinging is reborn under the light of Insomniac's creative sun. It becomes challenging to get around, realism takes over and suddenly you're completely on your own, almost flying without wings, and this is where the fun begins. You are Spider-Man, and even after 50 hours on the game since I bought it, I still haven't mastered that. And that right there is the beauty of this new feature, and it's so fun. Relearning this slowly, increasingly stale system, while allowing for more freedom of expression than ever, new features like web slingshotting, new tricks, and a few more we can touch on later, means this entire portion of the game is both annoyingly good and frustratingly hindered by its very existence. 3 games in and swinging is becoming a bit tiresome. Fun, but tiresome. And Insomniac knew this. So, by adding an entirely new way to fly around the city, literally, they completely flipped this on its head. Say hello to the wingsuit. A new way to make New York and the newly added boroughs feel smaller than ever. A way to truly feel like the Wait, no, wrong franchise. But it delivers on the promise of the fun that every part of this game makes. It feels like this new way to make the Spider-Man feel quicker and more free than ever. Wind tunnels around the city make traversal between boroughs feel sort of on rails. These wind tunnels give any wingsuit wearing webhead a massive speed boost, sacrificing freedom for the speed. and this follows the same beaten down trope as the rest of this near perfect traversal. The most fun you'll ever have, but underwhelming. Adding a Just Cause 3-esque wingsuit nearly a decade after Rico donned the now iconic form of transport, but in a way which still sees it secondary to its predecessor, is a sad insight into the rest of this game. It's a 9 out of 10 in every way. Fun, emotional, memorable, but somehow secondary, and at best equal to what came before. Yet somehow every part of it is better. Traversal is the very backbone of fun and enjoyment that this game puts its weight on, and for a skilled enough Spider-Man, it's perfect. For a newly anointed webhead, it's 2 on the rails, and for everyone, it's the definitive Spider-Man traversal system. It is spectacular. But we can't talk about gameplay without talking about the combat. An ever-changing beast throughout this game that combines depth and simplicity in the best way. Combat, much like traversal, is familiar, but also different. Gone is the interrupting weapon wheel of the first 2 games, and in comes smaller, less intrusive menus to fire your web gadgets, symbiote powers and venom powers all at will, without slowing the fight to a halt and ruining your chances of a cool combo. Or worse, increasing your chances of a rogue bullet ruining that same combo. Combat is fun in this game, as is everything. Its attempt to be different from its 2 contemporaries is rewarded with it being the best combat system so far, with plenty of new features to make the player think and keep even the most noble hero on their feet. Parrying is a new feature in this game and serves as a way to keep the Spider-Man on the attack in combat. Previously, the only way to get out of a sticky situation was to dodge, which I always felt made Spider-Man feel a bit passive. But here we can test our timing, skills, and channel that pure symbiote-induced rage into a more fun way of dealing with incoming attacks. Not every attack can be dealt with by parrying. Heavy attacks require you to just fall back on your old reliable dodge to keep yourself from dying. But this is a really welcome addition. It's a classic staple of combat in these sort of games, and when you hit that perfect parry, ooh, it feels good, it feels really good. In this game, we have 2 characters in typical open world shenanigans, but almost 3 in combat. So for the second time in this investigation, welcome the symbiote.
Oh, you're done now!
After gaining the symbiote after his near-death confrontation with Kraven, Peter can channel his inner gamer rage and really throw some dirt in his opponent's eyes, nearly demolishing everything and everyone in his path. Combat becomes a cakewalk, akin to the use of the shock gloves in Batman Arkham Origins. Just pure and unbiased, unrelenting button mashing. Does this lean into the Spider-Man fantasy? Yes. It does, it's really good. Does it make combat completely derivative? Also yes. A system which allows the player to become a Terminator is obviously always fun. But this is balanced by the fact a certain amount of hits need to be landed. But after that threshold has been met, it's hard to not take advantage of this overwhelmingly fun power fantasy. It's great. Derivative, but god, it is good. Miles also has a kill streak to call in, a literal electrical nuke which emanates from his chest to wipe out whatever happens to find itself in his vicinity. Not as fun as Peter's kill streak, not actually as effective, but still fun to use. Combat is so fun in this game, satisfying, and above all it fulfills the power fantasy every Spidey fan wants to fulfill. Oh, there's also a stealth system in this game. Sort of. I'll be concise here, it's crap. You might as well ignore it exists and allow your fists to do the talking. It's better than the first 2 stealth systems, and this game was definitely not built for stealth, but it's serviceable, and if I were you, I'd ignore it like the enemies ignore their webbed up allies 2 feet in front of them. The new webline feature is welcome though. Being able to create your own vantage points and make the room your own personal gallery of hanging statues is really fun. Again, leading into that massive Spider-Man power fantasy this game goes for. But it's just not enough to save a genuinely dumb part of this game. There's no skill in stealth in this game, And although Spider-Man isn't a character known for his stealth, it would still be nice to make some sort of system which allows the player to be able to take out a room of hunters or symbiotes, still while keeping that fun and depth of the combat. For example, in this game, you can actually just highlight who is safe and who is not to take down, and this makes the whole stealth thing way too easy. But alas, there's always a sequel on the way. And considering, in my opinion, it's the only part of the gameplay that feels poor and rushed to this extent, it definitely deserves some more love, and I hope Insomniac work on this. These are the three main gameplay features in this game: the good, the great, and the forgettable. A skillful combination of fluidity, depth, and utter genius, combined with a serious sense of disappointment. Spider-Man 2 builds on every part of its predecessors, and by God it succeeds. It's deeper, more fun, and more Spider-Man. But at the same time, it could have been so much more if Insomniac had time. Time is the greatest enemy of creativity, and no one felt the heavy hand of time more than Insomniac. So, for our third and final possible culprit, I give you Insomniac Games themselves. The biggest culprit in our lineup, the Ock to our Spider-Man, the T-800 to our T-1000, the drug addict to our Jigsaw. Insomniac Games. Now, Spider-Man 2 had a turbulent birthing process to say the least. Set aside the lofty expectations set by themselves after creating the biggest rival to Arkham's supremacy atop the superhero video game mountain, and Insomniac found themselves with a conundrum as big as ours. How do you please a group of fans who've already been given gourmet dining? How do you make a game good enough to rival the kings of the genre while keeping your own identity and style? Well, on the surface, they found the answer. Spider-Man 2 sold over 2.5 million units in its first 24 hours, and sold 5 million units in 11 days, making it the best-selling PS5 first-party title of all time. And as of April 2024, it stands at a healthy 11 million units sold on a $315 million budget. A sizable budget, but an equally sizable return. Insomniac clearly did something right upon release, and the marketing campaigns for this game was some of the most unique I've ever seen, with vehicles being webbed up and a collaboration with Adidas. Yeah, that collaboration with Adidas. But overall, Insomniac smashed the marketing, and in all honesty, this isn't what we need to look at. By all accounts, this game went through somewhat development hell. Arguments between Insomniac and Sony, rushed sections, and a hefty amount of cutting made Spider-Man 2 feel like it could have been afforded a few more months for Insomniac to cook. Or maybe even another year. According to an article by Game Rant, Sony and the dev team had a pretty heated dispute regarding the standards of the content produced, which led Insomniac to making huge changes during the third act of the game. Hence why, out of everything, this whole game feels a bit rushed, and that's because, well, it was. And this was acknowledged by the devs. It's also worth noting that the voice actor for Venom, Tony Todd, stated on a fan panel at Fan Expo San Francisco that 90% of his lines as the anti-hero monster were cut, and the 10% left in the game are probably all we're ever going to hear. Which is really disappointing, as he smashed his performance, but alas, due to time crunches, we'll probably never hear more of his Venom unless the aforementioned alien gets his own spin-off in the styles of Miles Morales, which I think could be really cool if done well. Furthermore, at one point it was discussed that Miles would actually get his hands on the symbiote, which I'm actually kind of glad got cut. Personally, given his arc throughout this game, it would have been interesting to see how the symbiote affects his character, but not something we'd have particularly needed for his character. So, as we can see, despite getting a fair bit of Venom and symbiote content, we could have had a whole lot more. With the third act being extended and perhaps not as rushed, We could have seen Miles with the symbiote and perhaps gotten the mirrored version of the Peter versus Miles boss fight, along with being able to combine the symbiote with Miles' already existing powers. Finally, we'd get Venom with Venom. But yeah, whether by their own choice or the Sony overlords, we missed out on a host of Venom, hence why we only got 19 inches and not the full 25. After release though, well, this is where this game hit its most amount of controversy. And I don't feel like we can conduct this investigation without mentioning the Stephanie Tyler, MJ actor's drama. After the first round of controversy surrounding the different look MJ sports in this game, with fans upset that the Spider-Man 2 MJ seems to look nothing like her 2018 counterpart, fans began harassing and stalking Stephanie Tyler, which ultimately brought her to end her modelling and acting career. Now, obviously for a lot of reasons this is very sad. A woman who got put out of a job by a small minority of fans who took it way too far with Stephanie, even having one fan in particular ring into her work requesting she ring him back, and leaving numerous voicemails. Stephanie did a really good job as MJ in my opinion, and despite the differences in in-game looks, which I doubt had anything to do with her, I don't think she could have done much better with what she was given. Lastly, on our giant cork pinboard full of red pins and newspaper clippings, Sweet Baby Inc. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had heard of Sweet Baby Inc. I've known of them for about a year now, but I'd never taken the time to look them up or realise who they are. But oh my god, it has been the funniest part of researching this video. So, for the blissfully uneducated, Sweet Baby Inc. are a self-described narrative development and consultation studio who, quote-unquote, tell better, more empathetic stories while diversifying and enriching the video game industry. It's just buzzwords. Now, Sweet Baby Inc. were heavily involved with the narrative side of Spider-Man 2, and apparently they made various nerfs to Peter Parker. There's no doubt Peter is nerfed in this game, but this isn't where this ends. Before we get into this, I just want to say, I know nothing of politics, so I could be saying the worst thing ever, or the most agreeable point ever here, because I just don't care. Either way, this is just my own views on this really weird subject. Various sources claim Sweet Baby... Sorry, that name's so funny. Sweet Baby Inc. Why do you call it Sweet Baby Inc? Various sources claim that Sweet Baby Inc. made Spider-Man 2 woke. No! Woke is a really funny word, so forgive me if I laugh a few times. For those of you who don't know what woke means, it's to be aware of basically important societal facts and issues and be attentive to them. But despite the fact that there are definitely points where Spider-Man 2's story leans into more politically biased views, to say the game is woke is just kind of stupid. If you're playing a Spider-Man game and your first thought is, gay flag, oh no, gay people, or the wording to this mission is making Spider-Man seem weak, then I think you're the issue. Come on, it's a Spider-Man game. Just let the gay people exist in the Spider-Man game. It's not going to kill you, God almighty. But I'm in no means sticking up for everyone's least favourite company, because Sweet Baby Inc. do suck. Right, they are just insufferable. Everything they touch seems to die a horrible and painful death. And yeah, some poor decisions were made, and they definitely, I assume, had a hand in making Peter and Miles, especially Peter, seem weaker compared to their 2018 and 2020 counterparts respectively. But to place all of the issues with this game on them is simply unfair. Side note, but during research I came across the funniest website I maybe have ever found. It's called worthitourwoke.com, who basically point out every quote-unquote woke section of a game. And in their article on Spider-Man 2, they basically say that every point that there is a competent female character on screen, it's woke, and every time one of the Spider-Man gets their asses handed to them, it's woke. But it's really funny. It's just like, who... What is this?
Black Cat's in the game and she helps Spider-Man. That's woke. Get women in my game? No, I want to see men. I want to see women in the game. But anyway, Spider-Man 2 received a heap of backlash from people who don't understand the words they use. And with that, the game got dragged through the mud by people who share the same amount of collective brain cells and critical thinking skills as whatever hilarious image I decide to throw up on screen. I'll let that linger. Laugh now. Insomniac were thrown into an impossible situation, and still managed to create what is, as of now, the best Spider-Man game to date. Voice actor drama, Sweet Baby Ink. Sweet Baby Ink. The creepiest fans of all time, Sony's time crunch, a rushed third act, and the funniest woke backlash ever all tried to drag Spider-Man 2 through the mud. But it survived and came out the other side relatively unscathed. Injured, yes, but dead, not quite. Insomniac's future plans for the game have never been more muddied. A recent tweet in which they state they have no plans for future DLC, and with Marvel's Wolverine on the horizon, it seems less and less likely we'll get any City That Never Sleeps-esque add-ons, story-wise at least. But I have no doubts we'll keep getting new suits and gameplay fixes, quality of life updates, to fix the other holes that were left in development. But there is some hope for DLC, I suppose. Due to Insomniac suffering a massive firmware attack and subsequent leak of data back in December of 2023, which actually ended up seeing a playable version of the previously mentioned Wolverine game appear online, this, I imagine, could have pushed back development plans and be a part of the reason why DLC plans are being kept quiet. So, let's hope the leaks didn't actually squander whatever chances we might have for any future DLC, because a Carnage DLC would heal me on some sort of spiritual level. Overall, Insomniac did the best they could with the hand they were dealt with, but I'm just kind of sorry they got twisted up in this scene. From where Insomniac was standing, it must have seemed like an 18-carat run of bad luck, but the truth is, the game was rigged from the start. So, let's put this investigation to bed. Who is to blame for tarnishing the legacy of Spider-Man 2? Well, the evidence is all laid out. We've combed through the files and come to a conclusion to take down one of these culprits once and for all. So forever, for one final time, cue the chapter card. After sifting through hundreds of pages of evidence and compiling it into a file, I've consulted my grizzled veteran of the Force partner, and we've both come to the same conclusion. Criminals are a cowardly and superstitious lot, and the definition of a coward is someone who can't quite face the music when it matters, and hides behind their own things to deflect their own matters away. So, Insomniac Games, I find you guilty on charges of cowardice, pandering to the masses. Wait, no, this isn't right. The files are muddled up. We assumed wrong. We were wrong. We've been looking at this all backwards. All decisions come from the top, from the kingpin of the operation. So the real villain here is Sony. If it wasn't for Sony, there would have been no time crunches, no Sweet Baby Ink, no internal disputes, and no 19 inches of Venom. If Sony had kept their noses out of the development and let Insomniac cook, we could have had a masterpiece. They could have created a masterpiece, a generation-defining game. But because of their corporate greed and their need to flex their power, we were robbed of the true version of this game. A 10 out of 10 stripped to a 9 out of 10 over a few months of work. Disgusting. And no, you can't have your phone call, Sony. Get in the van and enjoy your time in County Bozo. This means we have to let our 3 culprits go. Innocent on all charges. So sorry for the inconvenience, guys. That was awkward. At least we captured the real villain. At least the story's over. We did it, guys. Yippee! I love Spider-Man 2. Like I said in the intro, it's become my second favourite superhero game of all time. And any criticisms of this game were made out of love for the game, not hate, if that makes sense, for the want of a better world for Spider-Man fans and Spider-Man gaming fans across the globe. But I think it's time for me to put my trench coat and trilby away, hand in my badge and my gun, and head back home to rest on my laurels. Thank you so much for watching this, and I do hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video if you actually did like it, and subscribe if you think the videos are that good. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.